The weird way I shoot the basketball. I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
Thumb crooked, ball spins, awkward spiral gone rogue. Flick of the wrist looking more like a code. Elbow rebel mechanics and textbook critics on the side, bet they reading my footnotes.
Today's video is about, let me tell you about the stupid thing I do so that you don't do it too, even though you probably never would, because I don't know, I've never seen anyone else make this mistake. So hopefully, thankfully, I'm the only one that does or has, but just in case, this is a do as I say, not as I do video. I've never claimed to be a scorer, and I am definitely not a shooter. I've never claimed any of that. I am a pass first point guard. That's what I claim. I'm not a shooter, not a scorer, never have been, never claimed to be. I've actually gotten recently some challenges for one-on-one games against me, and it's like, not only am I not a scorer, but I am a washed up over the hill old man. I don't play anymore. You could beat me easily. Even in my prime, if we're talking a shooting contest, you would probably win. I'm not a shooter. So when I show you how I shoot the ball and how it's a mistake, make sure that you understand I'm not claiming that I'm a good shooter. All right, like, you have rarely ever gotten any kind of, especially specific shooting advice from me, because I am the wrong person to give you that advice, because I'm not a skilled shooter. I got to the point where I could shoot the ball, like if I was, like, you couldn't leave me open, because if I was left open pretty much anywhere on the court, I could make an open shot if left open. But other than that, in terms of shooting, and especially like shooting off the dribble, it's not my game. I'm just not that kind of a player. I could do a little bit of it here and there, but definitely not a strength of mine. And one of the reasons is because of how I actually shoot the ball. And so today we're going to talk about how I do it, the mistake I make, and how it affects my jump shot, and I guess, like, how and why you should avoid it. Or if you see a younger player who's starting to develop their game, make sure they don't do what I do or did or learned, and just be better than me. Before I show you my mistake that I make, which is not like egregious or terrible, like, if you guys are subscribers to the channel, I don't put a whole lot of video of me playing and shooting the ball. It does exist. You can find it. There's like a whole hour-long video that I made recently about shooting around and how to not waste time while shooting around, which is me shooting around the entire time and walking you through how to do it in a structured way where you actually make progress. So there is video on this channel of me shooting. It's just not all that common. Like I said, I'm old and over the hill. I don't play very much, so I don't demonstrate how to play very much, because I don't play anymore. So my mistake is not like detrimental. It doesn't destroy my jumper. It's just something that, looking back on it now, seems like unnecessary. It's an unnecessary mistake that I don't need to be making. I didn't need to start making back when I first started it as a kid. But let me give you background so you understand how I got to that mistake and why I started making it. I don't know about how you guys got started with basketball, but for me, I think it was like a Christmas present or something one year when I was like 6 or 7 or something. I just got a basketball, and at first I didn't even have a basketball hoop. Like, I live in Michigan. I got the ball in Christmas. I couldn't use it, like, at least not outdoors, until the summertime. And when I did, I didn't even have like a basketball hoop yet. So I first started out by just dribbling the basketball. But as soon as I did that, as soon as I got outside in nature and sunlight and warm weather, I immediately fell in love with just having a basketball in my hands. I got very lucky in that basketball just sort of fit me immediately. Now, when I say it fit me, to me it meant like I just loved the experience of having a basketball in my hand and using the basketball. I was terrible throughout my entire childhood. Even when I got a basket and started shooting, I was just terrible the entire time. But the reason I say I was lucky is because I enjoyed it. I loved it anyway, even though I was terrible. And I knew I was terrible, therefore I didn't have any illusions of like, oh, one day I'm gonna go pro. I didn't even think like, oh, one day I'm gonna join like my high school basketball team or anything. Like, no, I knew I was terrible. I knew I wasn't gonna try to play any kind of organized basketball. I just loved having the basketball in my possession and doing basketball stuff with it, even though I sucked. So when I did finally get a basket and I finally started shooting, I didn't have anyone like around to teach me the game, especially not to teach me like how to play the game properly or any kind of fundamentals or any skill whatsoever. Everything I did on the basketball court as a kid, I just was mimicking what I saw like on TV. And I didn't even like watch NBA basketball as a kid. If I was going through the channels as a kid, channel surfing, and you come across the Detroit Pistons game, it's like, okay, well, I guess that's how you play basketball. That's what basketball players do. When I'm outside next time, I'll just mimic what the NBA players do. So I didn't have any skill. I didn't have anybody to teach me any form of skill about basketball. I just mimicked what I saw on TV. So when I shot the basketball, I just did what it looked like the NBA players in the early 90s were doing. The problem came into play where I'm, 8 years old or something like that, but I'm using an adult size 7 size basketball as an 8-year-old with 8-year-old size hands. The basket I had was one of those like oval shaped wooden basketball backboards with the basket on it, but it was I guess it was a portable. I guess you can consider it portable in that like the base of it was like these 4 metal poles that just held the backboard and the basket, and they went down to the ground, and they were like a tripod, except for they were 4 feet that just laid out in like a square formation on the ground. It was like 4 poles sticking out in 4 different directions. That was the stanchion. It kept the backboard and the rim in place. Wasn't very good. If you shot hard enough, it would knock the thing over, and it wasn't great, but it was okay at first because it was only like, I don't know, 6 feet high or something like that when I was an 8-year-old. Eventually, my parents took that apart, and they took the backboard and they screwed it in to the side of the building that I used to play at. I grew up living at a senior citizen housing project because my dad was the manager there. And I played on the patio that was like in the center of this apartment building. And so they took that backboard and they screwed it into the brick wall of the patio there. And now my parents, whoever did it, I think it was my uncle that screwed it up there. They don't know anything about basketball. All they knew was like the basket's supposed to be 10 feet high, but he clearly put it higher than 10 feet. It was probably at least 10 and a half, if not 11 feet in the air. And so now, in terms of like the basket itself, it was a regulation sized basket, but it was like 11 feet high, and I'm like 8 or 9 years old, and I have a size 7 basketball, but 8-year-old hands. So now when I'm shooting at this basket that's too high with the basketball that's too big for my hands, I don't know how to shoot the ball, but I know that the NBA players shoot it like this, and they shoot. If you're really young and your hands are super tiny, the way you shoot is you shoot from the chest, and it's a push shot. You push the ball, but if you get tall enough, big enough, you can get to the point eventually where you start to imitate that one-handed NBA kind of shot. So when I started trying to do that, even though I was still probably too short and my hands were probably too small, I started trying to shoot that one-handed NBA-esque style kind of shot. The problem I got into was on my hand, whenever I would put the ball there, when I would bring the ball up to shoot, because my hands were so small, the ball would roll off the front of my palm. And remember, I don't have anybody telling me like, oh no, here's what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to do it. This is how you're supposed to shoot the ball. I'm just like trying to figure all this out on my own. So I know that like you're supposed to put the ball up here and cradle it like this, and then you're supposed to have this be like your support hand to come over and support the ball. But my hands are still so small that even doing this, the ball was still rolling off the front of my palm. So it was like, okay, how I can't shoot like the way I'm supposed to shoot like an NBA player because the ball won't stay on my hand long enough for me to shoot it. What I was trying to do was I was trying to bring it up like an NBA player and shoot from my head instead of shooting like a kid from my chest doing that push shot like all kids do. So trying to bring it up to my head and shoot it like an NBA player would, it kept just rolling off of my palm because my hand was too small and the ball was too big. Even using my support hand, it just wasn't helping. So what I decided to try so that I could shoot from my head without having to push the ball at the basket because my hands were too small was, I'm really dragging this out, aren't I? Not even that big of a deal. But so I'm demonstrating this with my right hand because most players are right-handed, and when I started shooting, I shot the ball with my right hand as well. But because I spent so much time during good weather months of the year on the basketball court, you put in enough time out here, you start to get bored, and when you start to get bored, you start to just, especially when you're a kid, you start to like fool around and experiment with like different ways to shoot the basketball to make it more fun. And what I found was when I would shoot the ball with my right hand, I had the strength and power to shoot you as far away as I wanted. Like the power and strength was abundant in my right arm, but the accuracy was not good at all. Don't know why. I just couldn't be accurate with my right hand. When I would experiment, fool around, and try shooting with my left hand, what I found was not nearly as much strength and power, but for whatever unknown reason, much more accuracy, much more accurate with my left hand. And because even though my left hand wasn't as strong, since it was more accurate and I got closer to the basket and I would actually make more shots with my left hand, like way more with my left than my right because my left was more accurate, I just started shooting with my left hand, even though I'm right-handed. And so now that I'm trying to develop this shooting from my head instead of pushing from my chest as a player, I'm still having the problem with the ball being too big and my hands being too small and it rolling off the front of my palm. So what my 8-year-old mind came up with somehow, some way, at some point was, instead of shooting the ball the way a normal person would shoot it, with your fingertips resting on the ball, bringing it up and using your support hand and trying to keep the ball in place like that, which again, what didn't really help or work for me, to combat the ball rolling off of my palm, I guess at some point I just experimented with taking my thumb and just sort of rotating it down to more of the front and side of the ball, like as far as I could go comfortably, and then bringing the ball up. And when I did that, now, even though my thumb is kind of off to the side a little bit, it was enough so that the ball wouldn't roll off of my palm, which to me was my biggest problem in terms of shooting the ball at that time, because it's like, I rarely ever made a shot, but if I couldn't actually get the ball up in the first place, then there is no shot to be shot if I can't actually bring the ball up. I could always do the kid thing and always just sort of shoot from my chest and push the ball at the basket, but I didn't want to do that because that didn't seem like the right way, like that's not the way the NBA professionals do it. I want to mimic what they do, so I want to bring the ball up to my head and actually shoot the ball. So the only way I could do that was by bringing my thumb down and putting it in front of the ball so that when I brought my ball up and loaded it, it's not gonna roll off of my palm. That's my big mistake. Let me jump in here as I'm editing this video. I'm about to show you guys how I shoot the basketball and the mistake that I make. Now, the crazy mistake that I made is I'm about to say I take this thumb when I'm shooting, and to keep the ball in place as I'm loading it, I bring my thumb down to keep the ball from rolling off of my wrist. That's not how I shoot. That's not how I hold the ball. If I would have shot the basketball in that video like I should have done, then I would have actually remembered my grave mistake, which is my left hand, the hand that I shoot with, the placement on the ball is perfectly fine and normal. What most players, normal players, would do is they'd load the ball like this and shoot like this. Instead, what I taught myself to do when I was a little kid to keep the ball from rolling off of my wrist was I would put my support hand on the ball, but then I would take this thumb and I would rotate this thumb out like this in front of the basketball. So now it doesn't fall off of my hand and my wrist as I'm loading my shot. That's the way I shoot to this day. So whenever I go to load my shot, my thumb automatically goes from being here like it should be, or how it would be with normal players, and instead when I catch the ball or when I load the ball into my pocket, my thumb just automatically rotates down like that. So now when I bring it up, my thumb is already here in front of the ball, and then it's just a matter of shooting a normal shot. Now, all of the problems that I say that come from having my thumb in front like that, all the problems are still exactly the same. It's just instead of my left shooting thumb being the thumb in front, it's my right support hand thumb that's in front. That's my bad. I'm sorry I didn't actually shoot the ball in that video. Is it terrible? Is it detrimental? Does it destroy my jump shot? No, but it was like the only thing at the time that helped. It was the only thing that in my 8-year-old mind I could conceive that would help me shoot from my head. So that's what I did. Thinking back like now, it's unnecessary and we'll get to that. But once I came up with that small little adjustment, I can't tell you the thousands and thousands of times I must have started shooting the ball like that to the point where I still shoot that way today. So now let's go over like what the fallout from me shooting like that became over my career. Like I said, it's not some kind of shot-breaking deal breaker mistake that completely destroys my jump shot. It's not ideal. I mean, obviously the ideal way to shoot the ball is to keep all your fingers spread out evenly and in a way that's comfortable for you to get a nice grip on the ball so that when you snap your wrist, everything goes the way you want it to go and you're able to shoot with these 3 fingers anyway. Like, I know that now, but at the time, not only did I not know that, but I didn't care. All I cared about was like, I can finally shoot from my head and I don't have to do the push shot. So it wasn't until I was like 13 that I finally started to learn the actual fundamentals of the game of basketball. Like, how do you actually do stuff properly so that you can actually be efficient and actually do things well, including shooting the ball. Now, when I learned, like, oh yeah, that thumb thing, you're not supposed to do that, and everybody else just shoots like this, and I'm a weirdo. When I learned that, I had already been shooting the ball like this for, 5 years? And I don't even know how many thousands of shots it must have been. Now, those thousands of shots, I maybe made 5% of the shots I ever shot shooting like that. But, you know, had I been shooting like this, had I taught myself the proper way to shoot the ball when I was 8 years old, maybe I would have made like 8% of the shots I took. I just wasn't good at basketball, and I didn't care because I was having fun. So I didn't care that I was terrible. I didn't care that I didn't have any skill. So even if I had learned to shoot the ball correctly, I still probably wouldn't have shot a high percentage because I just didn't care. And by the time I was 13 and had shot thousands of shots this way, it was like, by that time, like I started to realize like shooting's not my thing, scoring's not my thing anyway. So why move my thumb and then try to sort of rebuild my whole entire shot just around that little movement of my thumb and bringing it back to where it's supposed to be when I'm not a shooter or scorer anyway. It just didn't make sense for me to try to go through that process. Now, looking back, I should have probably, it's not a big regret that I have, but I think if I would have put myself through that process, I don't think it would have been that big of a deal. But I just decided, like, who cares? Like, I don't care because I'm not a shooter anyway. And I had taught myself how to start shooting like this fairly, like it was a modification that I made where I was able to build my jump shot around shooting like this. And so it didn't matter to me because I could compensate the rest of my jump shot so that I could shoot reasonably well, even making that mistake with my thumb. And I realized that it did come with problems. It did come with some kind of limitations. Those limitations being two major things, which were, number one, because my thumb is out in front of the ball like that when I shoot and release the ball. Because of that, number one, because my thumb is here when the ball starts moving off of my wrist and my hand, a lot of backspin is lost. My ball does not backspin a whole lot when I shoot it. It's much more slow. It's much more still than the average jump shot. And it's because my thumb gets in the way. Instead of the ball coming off my hand and releasing as I'm shooting with my thumb there to sort of keep it in place, it just loses a lot of backspin. Now, backspin is important in terms of like when the ball gets to the rim, when it gets to the backboard, the more backspin it has, the more likely it is for you to get a good, lucky, soft bounce at the rim. If you do hit the rim, the bounce that you get is going to be much softer. Thus, the shot is more likely to go in if it hits the rim with good backspin on it than if it's more still or slow the way mine is. And the second way that having my thumb like in front and in the way like that impacted my shot was I also had less arc on my shot. Because with my thumb there, when I release again, my thumb is getting in the way of the path and flight of the ball. And so with my thumb there, my shot would become flatter to the basket than it should have been or that I would have liked. Now, it wasn't completely flat. It did have arc, and I could I could push it higher and give it more arc whenever I wanted to, and so it wasn't that bad of a problem, but my normal standard jump shot was flatter than every other average player out here. And I knew both of that. I knew the backspin, I knew the arc. I was aware of them. And the way I looked at it, and I guess justified it at the time when I was really starting to learn how to play the game and the fundamentals of the game and really start to lay the foundation for my game, the way I justified little backspin and little arc on my shot was like, number one, I'm not a shooter in the first place, so I don't really care. But also, for me, that just meant like, okay, when I shoot the ball, because I have a lack of backspin, because my arc is a little flatter than the normal shot, that just means that forces me to have to be more accurate with my shot than most other players. Because most other players can rely on the backspin. Most other players can rely on optimal arc in their shot to have the ball just descend more directly into the basket than me. So because I can't depend on arc or backspin, that just means in terms of my shooting mechanics and my accuracy with getting the ball to the rim, I just have to be more accurate. Like it forced me to have to shoot the ball more accurately. And I was like, good. I look forward to that. I embrace that. I embrace the challenge of having to be more accurate at the sort of sacrifice of, I guess, like the sacrifice of backspin and arc. And of course, like, I'm not going to shoot around out here right now for this video to show you my weird looking jump shot, because it doesn't look, when I shoot the ball, unless you're looking at my thumb, my jump shot doesn't look weird. It doesn't stand out in any negative way noticeable unless you actually look at how I position my thumb. And so as I developed my jump shot over time, just like with any other player that has any kind of weird way that they shoot the basketball, the more you shoot, the more you sort of like learn how to compensate whatever weird mechanics you use to optimize them so that you actually can shoot the ball relatively well. And I did. I learned like, okay, can't depend on backspin, can't depend on arc. So when I shoot the ball, there's a very specific way I have to shoot the ball. So when I've talked on this channel a few times when I have been demonstrating my shooting, like when I shoot the ball, I have to involve my legs a lot. I have to really get a good strong jump on my jumper because I depend on that to generate arc, to get a little bit more, explosiveness on my release of the ball so I can get a little bit more backspin, a little bit more arc than I normally would have. Because if I just shoot the ball from almost like a set shot where I barely jump and barely get off the ground and my toes barely leave the ground, that shot for me is probably not going to go in because I can only compensate so much with my upper body and my arms because of having my thumb in the way. For me to propel my body and get the kind of explosion and power up through my body that I need to shoot the ball properly, that has to start with my legs. I have to jump strongly and powerfully every time. Otherwise, my jump shot almost just does not have a chance of going in. The more power and the more control I have over my jump when I shoot, the more control I have over my jump shot. The less strength, the more lazier I get on my jump, the worse my jump shot is going to be. Now that applies to everybody, but it definitely specifically applies to me with having my thumb in the way and using the power generated from my jump to get that little bit more arc and that little bit more backspin that I wouldn't have if I just shot the ball lazily with a lazy jump. So again, that's something that I learned relatively early, and I was like, okay, well, that just forces me not to be lazy, not to shoot a lazy jump shot. Not only do I have to be more accurate, but part of me being more accurate is I actually can't be lazy on my jump shot and barely get off the ground. I actually have to jump and put real effort into every single jumper that I take. Otherwise, I might as well not even shoot the ball because I can't get and generate the kind of explosivity that I want and need to release the ball the way everybody else does because my thumb is in the way. So instead, I'm just going to move my thumb back and just reteach myself how to shoot the ball like this. Instead of doing that, I'll just embrace the challenge of having to force myself to be more accurate. It never even sort of occurred to me that, hey, maybe if I move my thumb back, then I don't worry so much about the accuracy because moving my thumb back would kind of align everything better and make everything easier. Making stuff easier never occurred to me. I was never occupied or focused on that. It was like, I'm terrible at basketball anyway. I've always been terrible. So that means I have to work harder to improve my game than the most players out here. So if I have to teach myself to shoot a jump shot where my thumb is in the way and thus I have to be more accurate, then that's just the way it is for me. It makes it more difficult, but everything else in basketball is more difficult for me than everybody else. So why not have the jump shot be part of that? So I just learned and taught myself like, okay, this is just the way I shoot the ball. Let's figure out the best optimized way for me to do it. And like I said, I'm not a shoot off the dribble kind of guy. Never have been. Especially with having my thumb in the way like that, to be dribbling the ball and then moving in a certain direction and like suddenly pull up to do that, that's more difficult for me because, again, I have to generate the exact right amount of power and control in that jump. I can't get lazy on my pull-up, and once you're dribbling the ball around and you finally find the spot where you want to pull that pull-up from, by that time, maybe you're a little tired. Maybe you're running out of breath. Maybe your legs are feeling a little bit tired or fatigued, and so shooting the jumper in that situation is not optimal for the average player, and it's detrimental for me. So no, I'm not like a pull-up jumper, but if you leave me open from anywhere on the court, I'm going to be able to hit that shot because I have time to set up my jumper and generate the kind of power and control in my legs that I need. So it's not like I was an incompetent jump shooter. It was just like, no, if you leave me enough space or you leave me open, I can hit a jumper from anywhere, but I'm just not the kind of like, I'm going to take you off the dribble and then pull up in your face. It's just that just wasn't my game. That being established, let's talk about like how you can avoid this and what you should do instead to not make this kind of needless mistake that I made. If I could go back in time and teach the young kid version of me to shoot the basketball, what I would say is like, okay, like I get what you're trying to accomplish doing the thumb thing. I get it. Like you want to shoot from your head, not push the ball from your chest. So I understand what you're doing. My advice would be instead, just have the proper hand placement on the ball. And if the ball is too small, or if your hands are too small and the ball's too big or whatever, and you can't bring the ball up because the ball slides off your palm and you're trying to shoot from your head, then just wait. Keep proper hand position on the ball, the position that's best for you and feels comfortable and appropriate for you and the size of your hands compared to the ball and all of that. Keep proper hand position on the ball. And for now, just keep shooting from your chest and shooting with the kind of form you would be shooting with if you were shooting from your head instead of pushing from your chest. Keep shooting from your chest and pushing the ball for now, and then just wait until your hands and body get bigger. And then as they do, you can bring the ball up higher and higher and higher until you're eventually just shooting from your head like normal, and just keep your hands the way they're supposed to be until then. Don't do the thumb thing. That's what I would tell myself. How much of a difference it would make for me is probably marginal, but for the average player who probably isn't a pass first point guard like I am, would probably make much more of a difference. I was never really concerned or focused on being a shooter or trying to shoot the ball or being known for that, so it didn't really need to apply to me. But for the average person who probably is much more of a scorer than I am, or has more of a rounded game than I do, learning how to shoot the ball well, at least with good hand position and just going through the proper shooting motion from being a little kid, and starting with shooting and pushing from your chest and then slowly working your way up as you get bigger, as you get stronger. I think that is much more of the conventional, appropriate, right way to learn how to shoot the basketball. I know that's not like anything that's kind of like revolutionary or anything like that, but compared to the way I learned and taught myself how to mimic NBA players and shoot the ball, would have been probably a much better way for me to learn and to shoot the ball than the way I taught myself how to improvise. The problem is, if I would be able to go back in time, see myself, teach myself how to do that, 8-9-year-old me probably would not have the patience and certainly not the discipline to do that. And not only just because I'm like a 9-year-old kid, but because it's like me specifically, individually, I probably would have rebelled against doing it. Because I would have been like, no, why? Like, I figured out a way to shoot the ball from my head. Why would I go through the arduous process of little by little, as I grow and get stronger and my hands get bigger, like going through that, the evolution of bringing the ball higher and higher, starting from pushing from my chest. Like 9-year-old me would be like, okay, dude, like, okay, I'm not going to do it your way because I've already figured out my way of doing it. Hopefully I'm wrong. And like, I would have been like, oh, really? That's how you do it? Okay, let me actually do that and be disciplined enough to stick to that through 3 or 4 years until my hands get big enough. But knowing the way I was when I was a kid, like, no, 9-year-old me would have been like, okay, dude, I'll do it the way you show me to do it. And I'll do it like that while you're watching me. But as soon as you leave, I'm going back to my old way of doing it. So if you're learning to shoot the ball, or you see someone who's starting to learn how to shoot the ball, especially if they're a young kid and they're trying to shoot from their head, or they're trying to shoot the ball in a way that's beyond or more advanced for just physically where they're at as a player, my advice to you to give to them would be like, just show them the proper technique and tell them to like keep shooting from their chest because that's the way they need to. And then little by little work their way up to actually shooting from their head and going through that long process, just continuing to pay attention to like the very best form they can maintain throughout that growing process. I wish there was like a better, sexier, shortcut hack answer to it that I could give, but there is no shortcut to this, as far as I can tell. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I don't know why you would have or did, but if you did and you found this video helpful or interesting in any way, then please subscribe to the channel and let us know down in the comments about shooting. Like, what shooting mistakes have you made or have you seen? And if you've made them, like, how did you like overcome them, or at least compensate for whatever shooting mistakes that you make as a player? But before you comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below, because not only does hitting that thanks button highlight any comment you make, making it stand out from whatever other comments there are, it also directly supports the channel when you do. So for anyone that hits that thanks button, know I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment, like I said, make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, see you guys next week.
Used to brick wide backboard, kissing my shame. I was in the driveway, rain drilling my name. Taught the thumb to obey, made the oddities glide. Now the net sings gospel, switch choir on my side, yeah. Thumb tweak, hustle.